Commander HFY stood in the command center of his ship, looking at the data pad in his four-fingered hand. The mission briefing made him angry. After 20 years of faithful service to the Vorthak Empire, they were giving him this. A punishment assignment disguised as an honor. The orders were simple. Take command of Penal Battalion Omega-7, lead them to the human colony world called New Geneva. Use them to break the human defenses before the main fleet arrived. The humans would surrender quickly once they saw what they faced. HFY had read about humans before. A young species that had only been traveling between stars for 200 years. They were weak compared to most galactic races. Smaller than Vorthak warriors, not as strong as the Krill, not as smart as the Nethrin. Just another primitive species that would fall to the Empire like so many others. But the creatures he would command were not normal soldiers. They were the worst criminals and exiles from across the galaxy. The ones too dangerous to keep in normal prisons, too violent for regular military units. The Empire used them as expendable shock troops. Send them in first. Let them die breaking enemy lines. Save the real soldiers for important work. The first transport ship docked with his command vessel. HFY watched through the viewing window as the prisoners were transferred. Each one wore neural restraints around their necks. The devices would cause terrible pain if they tried to disobey orders or attack their commanders. But the restraints could not remove their natural bloodlust. A group of Krill mercenaries shuffled past in heavy chains. They were 2 meters tall with thick gray skin and razor-sharp teeth. On their homeworld, they hunted other intelligent species for sport. They ate the hearts of their enemies to gain their strength. 3 of them had been caught trying to raid a civilian transport. The Empire gave them a choice: death or service in the penal battalions. Behind them came a pack of Nethrin. They looked almost human except for their pale blue skin and completely black eyes. But HFY knew what they were capable of. Nethrin were experts at causing pain. They could keep a victim alive and screaming for weeks. These particular ones had been torturing prisoners on occupied worlds until their own commanders complained about the methods. Next were the Gorvani. Massive bear-like creatures covered in brown fur. They were usually peaceful traders. But these 3 had gone insane during a plague on their colony ship. They had killed and eaten 200 of their own people before being stopped. The plague was gone, but the madness remained. More prisoners followed. Assassins who had killed the wrong targets. Pirates who had attacked Imperial ships. Rebels who had led failed uprisings. Murderers and torturers and madmen from dozens of species. All of them now under his command. HFY met with his new officers in the briefing room. Lieutenant Vrak was a scarred Krill who had served in 3 previous penal battalions. He was still alive, which meant he was either very lucky or very smart. Probably both. How many times have you done this? HFY asked him. This will be my 4th human colony, Commander, Vrak replied. His voice was a low growl. They are all the same. Soft creatures who break easily. We lose maybe 20% of the battalion. The humans surrender in 3 days. Then we move to the next target. Science Officer Theiss was a Nethrin female who had been assigned to study human psychology. She had requested transfer to the penal battalions after her research was deemed too extreme for regular military units. What can you tell me about human fighting methods? HFY asked her. They are predictable, Theiss said. Her black eyes showed no emotion. They rely on technology instead of natural weapons. They form emotional attachments that make them weak. Threaten their young or their mates and they become irrational. Easy to manipulate. The 3rd officer was Grak, a Gorvani who served as the battalion's heavy weapons specialist. He was the only one of his species who had not gone mad with bloodlust. Instead, he had learned to control his hunger, to save it for the battlefield. Human weapons are primitive, Grak said in his deep rumbling voice. Projectile weapons mostly. Some energy weapons, but nothing that can penetrate our armor. Their vehicles are fast but lightly protected. We crush them easily. HFY nodded. The briefing matched what he had read in the intelligence reports. Humans were a minor threat at best. This assignment really was just busy work. A way to keep him away from important battles while his career stagnated. The fleet arrived at New Geneva 3 days later. HFY stood on the bridge and looked down at the human colony. It was built around a large city near the coast of the main continent. Satellite images showed approximately 2 million humans living there, most of them civilians. The military presence seemed light. A few orbital defense platforms, some ground-based missile sites. Nothing that would stop a determined assault. "Begin the attack," Zexai ordered. The first wave consisted of automated probe ships. They would test the human defenses and gather targeting data for the main assault. Zexai expected them to destroy the orbital platforms easily. Instead, the probes began exploding one by one. The human defense platforms were firing some kind of energy weapon that his sensors could not identify. Within minutes, all 12 probes were destroyed. "Interesting," Science Officer Thys said. "Their weapons are more advanced than our intelligence suggested." "No matter," Lieutenant Vrak growled. "We will use the prisoners to draw their fire, then land the real assault troops." Zexai ordered the first wave of landing craft to launch. Each ship carried 50 prisoners from the penal battalion. They would hit the surface in 12 different locations around the human city. Spread the defenders thin, create chaos. The human orbital platforms opened fire again, but this time Zexai was ready. His ships returned fire with everything they had. Plasma cannons and missile batteries hammered the human positions. 2 of the platforms exploded. A third went silent. But the remaining ones kept firing. The human weapons were more powerful than expected. 3 landing craft were destroyed before they reached the atmosphere. The surviving ships made it to the surface. Zexai watched through combat cameras as the prisoners poured out of their transports. 500 of the galaxy's most dangerous killers unleashed on a human colony world. Lieutenant Vrak led the main assault force toward the city center. The Krill were howling their battle cries as they charged forward. Behind them came the Nethrin, already planning what they would do to captured humans. The Gorvani trampled everything in their path. This was supposed to be the easy part. The humans would see what they faced and lose heart. Their primitive weapons would barely scratch the attacking forces. Within hours, the human leadership would be begging for mercy. But as Zexai watched the battle feeds, he began to realize something was wrong. The monsters under his command were meeting resistance they had never faced before. The humans were not running away. They were not surrendering. Instead, they were fighting back with a determination that seemed impossible. Even when facing creatures twice their size and 10 times as strong, the humans kept fighting. And somehow, impossibly, some of them were winning. Zexai stared at the tactical displays in confusion. This was not how human colonies were supposed to fall. This was not how prey was supposed to behave when faced with predators. For the first time in his career, Commander Zexai began to wonder if the intelligence reports about humans might be completely wrong. The first day of battle was supposed to end with human surrender. Instead, it ended with Zexai staring at casualty reports that made no sense. 43 prisoners dead. 67 wounded. The Krill pack that had charged the human defensive lines was reduced from 20 warriors to 8. 3 Nethrin assassins had been killed by human children using improvised explosives. The humans had lost ground, but they were making every meter cost blood. Lieutenant Vrak limped into the command center. His left arm was bandaged and his gray skin was covered in burn marks from human energy weapons. "Report," Zexai ordered. "The humans fight like nothing I have seen before," Vrak said. His voice was filled with something Zexai had never heard from a Krill warrior. Respect. "They do not break when we charge. They do not run when we roar. When we corner them, they become more dangerous." "Explain." Vrak activated a holographic display showing combat footage from his helmet camera. The image showed a human residential area. Small houses with gardens and children's toys scattered in the yards. "We found a group of human civilians here," Vrak said. 30 adults and maybe 15 young ones. They should have surrendered immediately. Instead, they fought. The footage showed human adults pushing their children behind improvised barricades. The humans had weapons, but they were clearly not soldiers. Their movements were clumsy. Their aim was poor. But they kept fighting even when Krill warriors broke through their lines. "Watch this part," Vrak said. The camera showed a human female, wounded and bleeding, crawling across open ground. She was dragging something behind her. Zexai realized it was an explosive device of some kind. The woman reached a group of advancing Gorvani and detonated the bomb. The explosion killed her and 3 of the massive bear-like creatures. "She chose to die rather than let us pass," Vrak said quietly. Her young were behind her. She could have run. She could have hidden. Instead, she killed herself to stop us for a few more minutes. Zexai had seen many species fight for their homes. Most of them showed courage at first. But when they saw what they faced, when they realized they could not win, they usually gave up. They would surrender to save lives, to protect their families. Humans seem to have no concept of surrender. Science Officer Theiss entered the command center carrying a datapad. Her pale blue skin was paler than usual, and her black eyes were wide with confusion. "I have been studying the human prisoners," she said. "The results are disturbing." "How so?" "I use standard interrogation techniques on 5 human captives. 2 adult males, 1 adult female, and 2 juveniles approximately 12 years old. The adults revealed nothing useful despite extensive questioning. But the young ones were even more resistant." This showed Zexhai the interrogation recordings. He watched Nethran experts apply pain devices that had broken trained soldiers from a dozen species. The human children screamed, but they did not reveal the locations of civilian shelters or military positions. "How is this possible?" Zexhai asked. "Young humans should be the easiest to break." "I believe they have been trained for this," Thys said. "All human children seem to know basic resistance techniques. They have been taught what to expect if captured. They are prepared to die rather than reveal information. What kind of species trains its young for war? One that expects to fight for its survival." Heavy footsteps announced the arrival of Grak. The massive Gorvani weapons specialist had to duck to fit through the doorway. His brown fur was singed and his left ear was bleeding. "The humans have better weapons than our intelligence suggested," Grak rumbled. "They have energy rifles that can penetrate our standard armor. Their explosives are more sophisticated than expected, and they are learning our tactics faster than we can adapt." "What do you mean learning?" "This morning, our standard charge formation broke through their lines in 3 places. This afternoon, they had developed countermeasures for that exact attack. They placed shaped charges that channel our advance into killing zones. They use our own momentum against us." Zexhai pulled up the tactical map. The human city was marked with red zones where his forces had taken ground, and blue zones that remained under human control. After 12 hours of fighting, the red zones covered less than 20% of the city. At this rate, it would take weeks to capture the colony. The main fleet would arrive expecting to find broken human defenses and a demoralized population ready for processing. Instead, they would find organized resistance that was getting stronger with every hour. "Commander," the communications officer called out, "we are receiving a transmission from the surface. Human military frequency. Put it through." The main screen flickered and showed a human face. It was a female with short brown hair and green eyes. She was wearing some kind of military uniform, but it was torn and bloody. Behind her, Zexhai could see the ruins of what had once been a government building. "This is Colonel Sarah Chen, commanding New Geneva Defense Force," the human said. Her voice was calm despite the explosions that could be heard in the background. "I have a message for the alien commander. This is Commander Zexhai of the Vorthek Empire. You will surrender immediately or face complete destruction." The human woman smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "We know what you do to surrendered populations," she said. "We have studied your previous conquests. The work camps, the executions, the medical experiments. So let me make something clear. We will not surrender. We will fight until every last one of us is dead. Your resistance is pointless. You cannot win against the full might of the Empire. Maybe not. But we can make you pay for every meter of ground. We can show the galaxy that humans do not die quietly, and we can gather intelligence about your forces that will help other human colonies defend themselves." The transmission ended. Zexhai stared at the blank screen, trying to process what he had just heard. The human commander had spoken about studying previous Vorthak conquests, about gathering intelligence, about helping other colonies. This was not the behavior of a desperate last stand. This was the behavior of a species that was planning for a longer war. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, "we are detecting movement in the outer system. 3 unknown vessels on approach vector. Human reinforcements? Unclear. The ships do not match any known human designs in our database." Zexhai felt a chill run down his spine. If the humans had allies, if this was part of a larger resistance movement, then everything the Empire believed about human capabilities was wrong. On the surface below, the battle continued. His monsters were still fighting, still dying, still discovering that humans were unlike any prey they had ever hunted. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a terrible thought was beginning to form. What if the humans were not the prey in this situation? What if something else was happening here? What if the monsters under his command were not the predators they believed themselves to be? 3 days into the siege, Zexai found himself listening to conversations he never thought he would hear. The monsters under his command were talking about humans with something that sounded like fear. He walked through the prisoner encampment on the surface, observing the creatures that had terrorized a dozen worlds. They sat around small fires, sharing stories that would have been impossible before they met humans. A group of Krill warriors was discussing their latest assault on a human school. The building had been converted into a fortress, with teachers and older students defending the younger children inside. The human female with the projectile weapon, one of them said, pointing to a fresh scar across his chest. She hit me from 800 meters. Perfect shot, right between armor plates. She was protecting the small ones, another Krill added. When we finally breached the building, she was the last defender. Fought with broken ribs and a bleeding head wound, never stopped firing until we brought her down. How did she learn to shoot like that? A third warrior asked. The human prisoners say their people are trained from childhood. Not just soldiers. All of them. Every human adult knows how to fight. Zexai paused to listen. In Krill culture, warriors earned respect by defeating strong opponents. The fact that they were speaking about human civilians as worthy adversaries was unprecedented. Nearby, a group of Nethrin was having an even stranger conversation. These creatures lived to cause pain and suffering. They measured their success by how long they could keep victims alive while torturing them, but now they were talking about refusing interrogation assignments. I will not question human young ones again, one of them said. There is no point. The pain devices do not work on them the way they work on other species, another agreed. They scream yes, but they do not break. They do not beg. They simply endure until they die. It is not natural. Young creatures should be weak, should be easy to control. These are not normal young creatures. They have been hardened somehow, prepared for suffering. A third Nethrin spoke up, and his words chilled Zexai to the bone. I think we are the ones being studied. The humans who die under questioning, they delay as long as possible. They give false information that leads us into traps. They are learning our methods while pretending to be victims. Zexai moved on before they noticed him listening. He found Grak near the heavy weapons depot, checking ammunition supplies. The massive Gorvani looked tired and frustrated. What is the ammunition situation? Zexai asked. We are using 3 times as much as expected, Grak replied. The humans adapt to our weapons quickly. We destroy their position with artillery. They scatter and reappear somewhere else with better cover. We use energy weapons. They deploy reflective barriers. We switch to projectiles. They wear thicker armor. How are they adapting so fast? They learn from every attack. Every weapon we use, they find a counter for. It is like fighting an enemy that becomes stronger with each defeat. Grak pulled up a tactical display showing the past 3 days of combat. Red dots marked the locations where human forces had been destroyed. Blue dots showed where new human positions had appeared. Look at this pattern, Grak said. Every time we eliminate a human strong point, 2 new ones appear. Better positioned. Better defended. They are not just replacing losses. They are improving their entire defensive strategy. Zexai studied the display. The pattern was clear once you knew what to look for. The humans were not fighting a desperate holding action. They were conducting a massive training exercise using real combat to perfect their tactics. Commander, Lieutenant Vrak approached them. We have a problem. Some of the prisoners are requesting transfer off-world. Transfer? Why? They say the humans are too dangerous. They would rather serve in regular penal battalions than continue fighting here. This was unthinkable. These creatures had volunteered for suicide missions rather than face execution. They had fought battles against impossible odds without complaint. But humans had broken their will to fight. Which prisoners? Mostly the younger ones. The ones who have not seen as much combat, but also some veterans. 3 Krill Pack leaders have formally requested reassignment. On what grounds? They claim the humans are not legitimate military targets. They say civilians should not be this dangerous. That something is wrong with this species. Zexai felt a cold weight settling in his stomach. His own troops were beginning to fear the enemy. Not just respect them, but actually fear what they were capable of. That evening, he received a priority communication from Imperial High Command. Admiral Korth appeared on the screen, his purple skin dark with anger. Commander Zexai, you were supposed to have secured that colony by now. What is the delay? The human resistance is stronger than anticipated, Admiral. Our casualties are high and we are not making expected progress. Casualties? From humans? Commander, you are in charge of 500 of the most dangerous killers in the galaxy. They should be able to conquer a human city in hours. Yes, sir. However, the humans are proving to be more resourceful than our intelligence suggested. Resourceful? Admiral Korth's voice dripped with contempt. They are barely out of their Stone Age. Their weapons are primitive. Their tactics are simple. You have fought them before. Not exactly, sir. These humans seem different. Different how? Zexai hesitated. How could he explain that human children were killing veteran soldiers? That human civilians were outfighting trained warriors? That his own troops were beginning to speak of humans as predators rather than prey? They appear to have better training than previous human colonies, he said finally. Then adapt your tactics. Use more force. The main fleet arrives in 4 days. I expect to find broken human defenses and a captured population ready for processing. The transmission ended. Zexai stared at the blank screen, knowing that Admiral Korth had no idea what they were really facing. 4 days. He had 4 days to break a human population that seemed to get stronger with every attack. 4 days to defeat an enemy that learned from every mistake and adapted to every strategy. 4 days to prove that the monsters under his command were still predators and not prey. But, as he listened to the sounds of battle from the human city, as he watched his casualties mount and his forces struggle against civilians with improvised weapons, Zexai began to suspect that the real monsters in this fight were not the ones wearing neural restraints. The real monsters were the ones who had turned their entire population into weapons, the ones who trained their children for war, the ones who treated death as just another tactical problem to solve. The real monsters were human. The breakthrough came on the 4th day, but not in the way Zexai had expected. A group of human reinforcements arrived from the outer settlements. But these were not soldiers. They were farmers, teachers, merchants, and families with children. Civilians who should have been fleeing the battle zone. Instead, they joined the fight. Zexai watched through orbital surveillance as transport vehicles landed at the edge of the city. He expected to see military equipment and trained soldiers. Instead, he saw pickup trucks filled with hunting rifles, school buses converted into mobile command centers, and civilian aircraft dropping supplies to human defensive positions. This makes no sense, Science Officer Thace said, studying the feeds. Why are human civilians moving toward the battle instead of away from it? Maybe they do not understand what they face, Lieutenant Vrack suggested. But his voice lacked conviction. After 4 days of fighting humans, none of them believed these people were ignorant about warfare. The answer became clear when the new arrivals deployed across the city. They moved with purpose and organization that spoke of extensive planning. The farmers carried military-grade explosives hidden in grain sacks. The teachers had communications equipment that allowed them to coordinate with existing human forces. The children, some as young as 8 years old, began moving through the ruins with packages that Zexai realized were intelligence reports. They are all soldiers, Grack said in his rumbling voice. Every human in this colony has military training. That is impossible, Thace protested. Our intelligence reports indicate that human colonies have small professional armies and civilian populations. Our intelligence reports are wrong. The proof came that afternoon when a group of human children, separated from the main civilian evacuation, encountered a krill hunting pack in the ruins of a shopping complex. Zexai watched the feed expecting to see a massacre. Instead, he witnessed something that would haunt his dreams. The children did not run. They did not hide. They organized. The oldest child, a girl maybe 12 years old, took command of the group. She divided them into teams and began setting traps using materials scavenged from the destroyed stores. Within minutes, they had turned a simple shopping complex into a killing ground designed specifically for krill physiology. The first trap was a simple snare made from electrical cable. It caught a krill warrior around the ankle and triggered a collapse that buried him under several tons of rubble. The second trap used cleaning chemicals mixed together to create a toxic gas cloud that forced the pack to retreat from their intended path. But the third trap was pure genius. The children had found the building's fire suppression system and modified it to spray cooking oil instead of water. When the krill pack tried to charge across the slippery floor, they lost their footing. The children then triggered spark sources that turned the entire area into an inferno. 3 veteran krill warriors, each with decades of combat experience, were killed by human children using toys and household supplies. How did they know to do that? Frack asked, his voice barely a whisper. They have been trained, Zexai said. Not just the adults, not just the soldiers. Every human in this colony knows how to kill. The battle reached its breaking point that evening when Zexai received reports from all his unit commanders. The Krill packs were refusing to advance into areas controlled by human children. The Nethran interrogators were requesting reassignment rather than question more human prisoners. Even the Gorvani heavy assault troops were hesitating before attacking human positions. Lieutenant Vrak delivered the final blow to Zexai's confidence. Sir, we need to talk about withdrawal. Withdrawal? The troops are breaking, Commander. Not from casualties, though those are high. They are breaking because they cannot understand what they are fighting. These are not normal prey animals. These are predators disguised as civilians. Vrak activated his helmet camera feed from that day's assault. The images showed a human residential area where families had been trapped by the advancing alien forces. Instead of surrendering to save their children, the human parents had turned their homes into weapons. Kitchen knives became spears. Garden tools became clubs. Household chemicals became explosives. Even the children's toys had been modified into surveillance devices and communication tools. Watch this, Vrak said. The feed showed a human family trapped in their basement. 2 adults and 3 children, ages ranging from 6 to 14. Krill warriors had surrounded the house and were preparing to breach the entrance. The human father triggered something that caused the entire building to collapse. He had wired his own home with explosives, choosing to kill his family rather than let them be captured. But the explosion was precisely calculated. It killed the Krill assault team while leaving the neighboring houses intact. He practiced this, Vrak said quietly. This was not a desperate improvisation. This human had prepared to destroy his own home with his family inside if necessary. They all have. Zexai reviewed the casualty reports one more time. In 4 days of fighting, his forces had killed approximately 3,000 humans, military and civilian combined. But those deaths had cost him over 200 of his own troops. Creatures that had terrorized entire star systems were being defeated by human families defending their neighborhoods. The mathematics were impossible. 3,000 humans should not be able to kill 200 experienced alien warriors. But they had done it by turning everything into a weapon. Their tools, their homes, their vehicles, even their own bodies when necessary. Commander, the communications officer called out. Priority transmission from the surface. Human military frequency again. The screen showed Colonel Chen once more. She was standing in what appeared to be the human government building, but now it was heavily fortified. Behind her, Zexai could see human children working alongside adults to prepare defensive positions. Commander Zexai, Chen said, I have a message for you and your superiors. Speak. We know your main fleet arrives tomorrow. We know you expect to find a broken population ready for capture and processing. I want you to understand something before your reinforcements get here. Chen gestured to the children behind her. They looked up from their work and stared directly into the camera. Their eyes held no fear. No desperation, only cold determination. Every human child in this colony has been trained since birth for this moment. They know how to fight. They know how to kill. They know how to die if necessary. And most importantly, they know how to learn. You cannot win against the full Imperial fleet. You are probably right. But we have learned everything about your weapons, your tactics, your psychology, and your weaknesses. That information is already being transmitted to every human colony in this sector. Chen smiled, and again it was not a pleasant expression. Thank you for the education, Commander. Other human worlds will be ready for you now. The transmission ended, leaving Zexai staring at his reflection in the black screen. For the first time in his military career, he understood what real fear felt like. His monsters had not been fighting a colonial population. They had been training an enemy that was designed to learn from every attack, every tactic, every mistake, and tomorrow, when the main Imperial fleet arrived expecting easy victory, they would face humans who had been educated by 4 days of intensive combat training. Humans who now knew exactly how to kill Vorthak soldiers. The Imperial fleet arrived exactly on schedule. Zexai watched from his command deck as 200 warships dropped out of hyperspace around New Geneva. Admiral Korth's flagship led the formation, followed by heavy cruisers, destroyers, and troop transports carrying 50,000 Imperial soldiers. It should have been the end of human resistance. Instead, it was the beginning of Zexai's education about what humans were truly capable of. The first surprise came when the fleet moved into attack formation. Hidden sensors throughout the system activated, providing the humans with detailed scans of every Imperial ship, sensor data that should have been impossible for a primitive colony to gather. The second surprise came when Admiral Korth tried to contact the surface. "This is Admiral Korth of the 4th Imperial Fleet," he broadcast on all frequencies. "Human forces will surrender immediately or face complete annihilation." The response came not from Colonel Chen, but from a new voice. Young, female, and speaking with absolute confidence. "This is Sarah Chen, age 16, current commanding officer of New Geneva Defense Force. Admiral, we need to talk." Zexai felt his blood freeze. The human military commander was a child, and she had said current commanding officer, which meant something had happened to the adult leadership. "Commander Zexai," Admiral Korth's voice crackled through the communication system. "What is the situation down there?" "Sir, the human resistance has been more effective than anticipated. We have faced significant casualties and the defensive positions remain largely intact." "Casualties? From a colonial militia?" Before Zexai could respond, the young human voice cut through their communication channel. "Admiral Korth, you should know that Commander Zexai has been fighting the initial phase of our combat evaluation exercise. We have gathered extensive data about Imperial military capabilities, weapons, tactics, and psychological profiles." "Combat evaluation exercise? Yes, New Geneva is a testing facility. Every human here volunteered to participate in a study of alien military capabilities. We have been preparing for Imperial contact for the past 18 months. Zexai's mind reeled. The humans had known they were coming. The colony was not a civilian population caught by surprise. It was a military research station designed to study enemy forces. "The children, the families, the civilians," he said into his communicator. "All volunteers," the girl replied. "All trained. All gathering intelligence about your species. We now know how Krill pack tactics work, what Nethran interrogation methods involve, and how Gravani heavy weapons function. We know your communication protocols, your command structure, and your psychological weaknesses." Admiral Korth's voice was tight with anger. "Impossible. Our intelligence indicates that humans are a primitive species with limited military capability. Your intelligence is 18 months out of date, Admiral. We have been busy." The tactical display lit up with new contacts. Ships were decloaking throughout the system. Not human designs from the database, but something entirely new. Sleek vessels that radiated power signatures beyond anything in Imperial records. "What are those ships?" Korth demanded. "Human Defense Force Second Wave," the girl replied. "We have been building them while you were conquering other worlds. Using intelligence gathered from captured Imperial technology and tactical data from colonies you destroyed." Zexai realized the terrible truth. Every world the Empire had conquered had been sending information to human military command. Every battle, every tactic, every weapon system had been studied and analyzed. The humans had been learning from every Imperial victory. "You see, Admiral," the girl continued, "we learned something important from studying your previous conquests. The Empire always sends a small force first to break enemy morale. Then the main fleet arrives to finish the job. It is a predictable pattern. The human ships moved into attack formation. Their design was clearly based on Imperial technology, but improved and modified. Weapons that looked like enhanced versions of Imperial plasma cannons, shields that appeared to be based on captured Vorthak defensive systems. "We have been preparing for this exact scenario," the girl said. "A large Imperial fleet arriving to support a failed advance force. Your tactics are quite predictable once you study them. Commander Zexai," Admiral Korth's voice was harsh with accusation, "you allowed the humans to gather intelligence about our forces." "Sir, I was not informed that this was an intelligence-gathering operation, because it was not supposed to be. These humans have manipulated the entire situation." The first exchange of fire began as Admiral Korth lost patience with the conversation. Imperial ships opened up with full bombardment, expecting to overwhelm the smaller human force. The human ships fought back with weapons that performed exactly like Imperial technology, only better. More powerful, more accurate, more efficient. "How do they have our weapons?" Korth demanded. "They do not have our weapons, Admiral," Zexai said, understanding flooding through him. They have improved versions of our weapons, built from studying our technology. The battle was short and decisive. The human ships used Imperial tactics against Imperial forces, but executed those tactics better than the originals. They had learned every Imperial strategy and developed counters for each one. Within 2 hours, half the Imperial fleet was destroyed or disabled. Admiral Korth ordered a retreat, but the human ships were faster and more maneuverable than Imperial designs. Only a handful of Imperial vessels escaped the system. Zexai found himself in command of one of the surviving ships, watching the human fleet take control of the wreckage. They were not destroying the captured Imperial vessels. They were towing them away for study. "Commander," the young human voice contacted him directly. "Before you leave, I want you to understand something." "What?" "New Geneva was just one research facility. We have similar operations running on 47 different human worlds. Every time the Imperial fleet attacks one of our colonies, we learn more about your capabilities." Zexai felt sick. The Empire had not been conquering human colonies. It had been training human military forces. "Your species believes that strength comes from size and aggression," the girl continued. "But humans believe that strength comes from learning and adapting. Every defeat teaches us how to win the next battle. What do you want?" "We want you to take a message back to Imperial High Command. Tell them that humanity is no longer interested in being conquered. We are ready to discuss terms for Imperial surrender." "Surrender? The Empire will never surrender to humans. The Empire has already lost, Commander. You just do not know it yet. Every ship in your fleet is now equipped with quantum transmitters that we installed during the battle. We can track every Imperial vessel in real time. We know the location of every Imperial base and shipyard." Zexai checked his ship's sensors. Hidden among the battle damage were small devices he had never seen before. Devices that had been attached to his ship during the fighting. "While you were fighting our test population, our real military forces were infiltrating your empire. Sleeper agents have been in place for months. Your supply lines are compromised. Your communication networks are monitored. Your leadership structure has been mapped and analyzed. The tactical display showed the locations of the surviving Imperial ships. Red dots scattered across space, all transmitting their positions to the human fleet. The Empire survived by being stronger than its enemies," the girl said. "But humans survive by being smarter than their enemies. We have been studying you for 2 years, Admiral. We know your weaknesses better than you do." Zexai understood now why his monsters had spoken of humans with fear. They had not been fighting prey animals. They had been serving as test subjects for predators who hunted with intelligence instead of claws. "The message for your superiors is simple," the girl concluded. "Phase 2 begins now. We are coming for the rest of your empire, and we will use everything you taught us to take it apart piece by piece." The communication ended. Zexai stared at the human ship surrounding his damaged vessel, finally understanding what humans were truly capable of. They did not just fight wars. They studied them. They learned from them. They turned every defeat into preparation for inevitable victory. The monsters under his command had not been the predators in this encounter. They had been specimens in humanity's laboratory, and now the experiment was over. The real war was about to begin.